if you go to a museum, that's immersive. You're immersing yourself in the creative and the culture of an era, of a theme. But we've created this smaller offset of attractions called immersive experiences. And each one of them is unique in their own way. And they come together in a way to deliver some type of story. And here at Inter, one of the things that we've done is we've developed what we call the Interverse.
Welcome to the Attraction Pros podcast, where we discuss the latest trends and challenges facing the attractions industry today.
We chat with some of the top leaders in the field and provide resources that will help develop your career in this great industry.
I am Josh Liebman. I am obsessed with the guest experience and helping attractions make that their top priority for success.
And I'm Matt Heller. I am passionate about organizational effectiveness, leadership development, and employee engagement.
Now sit upright, hold on tight, and get ready for the Attraction Pros podcast.
Hey, Matt, how's it going?
Hey, Josh, it's going fantastically. How are you?
Good. That was a long, drawn out, fantastic, because it's not a mini-sode.
It is not a mini-sode. It's
you get as many A's as you want.
Full length, full on, full episode.
Yes, we have a great interview today, but I have a question for you first.
Bring it.
Remember when we did that mini-sode? I think it was the first or second mini-sode that we did leading up to episode 300, where we posed the question of how will AI impact the attractions industry?
I'm going to say yes, I remember that.
Okay, good. We came up with a number. Well, actually, we did not come up with a number of examples. ChatGPT assisted us in coming up with examples of that. But what we hadn't considered is how AI can actually lead a guest through an experience.
We did not talk about that. No, you're absolutely right.
We did not talk about that until today.
Today. I was today years old.
Yes, you were. Because Zach Blutner, managing director of Inter, which is spelled with an underscore at the end because you get to fill in the blank, walks us through how AI leads guests through the Inter experience in New York City.
And there are so many inters to think about, interconnected, and I can't think of them all right now, but there's a lot of ways that he used Interverse. That was another thing that he talked about. But really to hear the description of this experience, it really is something that I don't know that I've ever experienced, quite frankly. You know, I feel lucky to have been to some immersive experiences in the past. We talked about how it was in Iceland, and I went in an immersive ice cave and that type of thing. But this, I think, is something that's very, very different.
I'm not even going to begin to describe it because I will not do it justice. Aside from that, it's 45 minutes and really cool. The experience itself, not the description of it. The interview itself is about that. But the way that Zach describes it, he takes us through the whole linear approach and the fact that AI, which they call I, leads you through the experience and all the different rooms and all the different things that you see and do and experience and feel all under an hour. It's just amazing what technology is capable of doing these days.
Well, and one thing I will say about it, again, without giving too much away about the experience, is that it feels like it could be transformative for someone. It feels like it could be very impactful and a powerful experience if it's something that you truly embrace. Now, to say that that's going to happen after 45 minutes, I think you'll get a better understanding of why we might say that after you hear his explanation of the attraction.
Yeah. And the other things that we go into is we talk about storytelling. Zach has a great background in the industry, all within New York, and he shares some of the other attractions and places that he's worked for. And he's had experience as a tour guide and managing tour operations. And so we connect some of the dots there. And we talk about the importance of storytelling from the guest experience, from the employee experience, as a leader, the importance of it. And, he talks about all the different layers that storytelling has in it that impact everyone in their own unique way.
Absolutely. And he does go back and talk about that thing called the Interverse as well, and what that means to the experience. So is it time to jump into the Interverse and check out this interview with Zach?
Let's immerse ourselves right into it.
Hey, Zach, welcome to the Attraction Pros podcast. How you doing today?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So excited to jump into this conversation. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your career?
Sure. So I'm based in New York, born and raised in New York, been in the attractions industry for going on 20 years next month. Started out in museums, made my way over to experiences, have done all different types of attractions and experiences in New York, and love the opportunity to work with people who are spending their leisure time, which is what we do in this industry. So it's always great working with people who are there because they want to, not because they have to be there.
Nicely said. So tell us a little bit about, you talked about kind of your career journey a little bit through the museums and all the different attractions within New York. Let's talk about Inter. What is Inter first? And also, how did you make your way to Inter as this step in your career?
Sure. Inter found me, and it's just been a blast being here and helping to tell the story of Inter. I consider myself a storyteller, and I've felt that way for about the last 15 years when I realized it. And so Inter is an immersive experience, which that's a term that is very big right now. And it's based in New York on the corner of Broadway and Canal Street. It is an AI-led experience. So our story is told by I, which is an AI from the future, that has come to now to talk about all that I has experienced watching humans over time and all of the things that bring us together, interconnected, if you will. So I came aboard here at Inter in May of 2023. Inter opened in November of 2022 here in New York.
And Zach, can you walk us through a little bit more about the experience? Because you say it's AI, it's driven by I, and it's not something I think you can understand unless you get a little bit more context, I think.
Absolutely. So when people hear the word immersive experience, they tend to be drawn to the concept of like one giant room, projection mapping, kind of like Van Gogh and other experiences. That is not what Inter is. Inter is over 10 different unique worlds within our experience. And as I said, I is this AI from the future that is narrating your journey through what we call a phygital digital art experience. And that means that you're in spaces where, yeah, we use projection mapping in our dome. We have a 12-minute dome experience, which is 360 degrees. It's fully interactive, the full 12 minutes. You actually engage with the art that's on display on the walls. And then when you step away, it goes back to what it was. So everybody that has an experience in the dome has a unique experience to themselves. From there, you enter into our idyllic garden, which is where we get into that word phygital. So the idyllic garden is colors, lights, scent, and you walk through it. And it's probably our most Instagrammable moment in the experience. People love to just take photos in there. It's beautifully designed and set up. And that leads you into our well area, which has 3 portals that take you on 3 different journeys to engage with art through them. And then we have an immersive room where you go in this infinity room, so it's mirrors around you, and then there's a digital component which you can actually interact with that digital component, and you see it on all the mirrors. Our well is the centerpiece of the room, and that has a beautiful design by our internal art team. We have an art and tech team internally who designs most of the creative, and you actually get to interact with it with these 3 orbs that are lit up around the well. The well in the center has a little bit of water in it, and as you move these orbs around, each one controls different effects, different elements of the screen. So the visual on the screen, the water, you can actually move the water, and the sound that you're hearing in the room. And if 3 people work together on those 3 orbs, again, interconnected, you actually unlock a special moment that only happens when 3 people are working on it. From there, we have an interactive floor. So as you're walking on the interactive floor, it actually picks up your movement, and you'll see people jumping around. Some people play like hopscotch on it. Some people dance. And so it fully engages with you as you move through it. And we have a nice little swing opportunity where you can sit down, and again, photo opportunity, photo moment. And it's designed to fit the room with these bright colors that glow in the dark and these flowers around it, like the garden. So it brings elements back together. On our lower level, we have this pathway, which again plays with sound and scent. And then you enter into what we call Ignite, which is this visually stunning room centered around a small volcano. And you can interact with 4 different elements in the room. So that brings up different sound and light journeys. And then there's 3 screens that you can engage within that room. After that, we have this room, which is just all mirrors, and we have a prompt on the wall, and we invite people to leave a message there based off of the prompt that we deliver. So now you've done most of this journey, share something from your journey on the wall there. And then our newest piece of the experience in what we call the gong room, which is a dark room. It has 3 gongs on the wall as this beautiful art centerpiece. And we now have introduced, last month, we introduced a guided meditation led by I. So I has you come in, relax, and takes you through 5 different types of meditation. And you can choose to do 1 segment or all 5 segments. You could do them twice, but you could sit in the room and just calm yourself. And again, it plays with the sound waves, and that kind of overwhelms you with the sound. And then when you come out of there, we have this beautiful white room, which recaps the journey that you went through visuals throughout the experience. And then we offer a GIF machine where you could take a photo of yourself, a movable photo, and actually complimentary send it to yourself. And it has AI designed graphics behind you. And then that is the Inter experience. It takes about 45 minutes to an hour to do.
Wow.
That is so fascinating. I really appreciate the level of detail that you shared with that, because even like Matt said, it's probably one of the things that I'm guessing guests don't fully understand what they're doing until they actually go through it. So I appreciate you saying it's about a 45-minute experience. So there is kind of you know what the time commitment is when you're coming through. Can you share a little bit more about how I leads you through the experience? I'm wondering how guests know what to do next and do all the things that you just mentioned.
So I is there with you in orientation, sets you up with what you're about to enter, this journey you're about to go on, and then along the way drops in with messages. And those messages get connected to the experience as you travel through them. And then the Dome experience, again, it's a 12-minute immersive, fully interactive art experience where I is leading you through the basic elements of the universe that connect all of us, and is telling you that story of how they come together and encouraging you to play with the visuals and to play and interact with people around you and to move. We have our guardians, which is our floor team, there to guide you along the journey, and they're in there leading you or pushing you to do a little bit more and to lift your experience. And then as you pass through the main experience, I pops in from time to time with some words of encouragement.
So Zach, I'm glad you mentioned the Guardians, because that was going to be my next question. In terms of the team member or the guests going through, and then there's probably some things where things need to be kind of pointed out to them, even if I is giving them hints and things like that. To me, and I know it's not an escape room, but that's a little bit what it feels like, just in the fact that, what do I do? Like, where do I start? And maybe they need a little hint or push in that right direction. So I'm glad you mentioned the Guardians. How involved are they?
The Guardians are, except for the Dome experience, they're there as more of like a passive way to kind of give you the hint and help you out, take a picture of you, things like that. But they're a key component to the experience. They're a key difference maker, because it's an opportunity for them to let their personality shine and to engage with the guest and to make it that moment in that guest's entire vacation possibly that's different than anything else they experienced.
Mm. One of the things we're wondering too is, the way you describe this, and even going back to one of the things you said towards the beginning of the word immersive, has really become it's a hot topic in the attractions industry these days. And I feel like there's so many different branches of immersion that attractions or kind of anywhere, in recreation or leisure can really take. Where does Inter fit in with this? And I would say, how is it different than other immersive attractions that are popping up all throughout the US and all over the world?
Sure. So as I mentioned before, when people hear immersive, they tend to go towards this idea of one giant room, projection mapping of art all around you. Van Gogh made it very popular a few years ago. A lot of this we feel is coming from social media, where people engage with each other in an online universe. And now you take that concept and you take it into an experience, and they come in and they want to share the beautiful photos or the videos, while also being within that environment, almost like being in a movie, being the main character in a movie. And you see this around the world. There are lots of ways that it's been executed: passive visual experience, tactile, interactive engagements. Inter takes all of that, brings it together, and leverages innovative technology that delivers this fusion between that word phygital that I talked about earlier and digital art, which creates what we call an interversive experience. And so I got my career start at the Intrepid Museum, which Intrepid Museum has been around for 40 years. That's an immersive experience. You are actually physically on a World War II era aircraft carrier. So it's not a new concept. It's just a term that has become hot now, this interactive, immersive experience.
Well, and when you talk about immersive, it can take so many different, so many different forms, right? Josh and I were talking about, I was just in Iceland and I was in an ice cave. That's immersive, right?
Yeah.
The technology that you're using to create this incredible experience, that's immersive. The Intrepid is immersive. It's just kind of when we're all surrounded.
Absolutely. Again, it comes down to telling a story and how you deliver the story. And if you go to a museum, that's immersive. You're immersing yourself in the creative and the culture of an era, of a theme. But we've created this smaller offset of attractions called immersive experiences. And each one of them is unique in their own way. And they come together in a way to deliver some type of story. And here at Inter, one of the things that we've done is we've developed what we call the Interverse. And the Interverse is this opportunity for us. It's an artistic universe. And Inter, here in New York at the corner of Broadway and Canal, is this outpost that allows you to enter this other universe and explore. And we're exploring with you. So over the course of the past few months, we took a deviation from our typical experience, and we did a Halloween-themed experience called the Holoverse. And this was meant to be AI, showing you what they've learned from humans over the course of time in the celebration of Halloween. And we changed the whole experience, changed the graphics, the colors, and we got a really great response on that publicly. And then after Thanksgiving, we launched what we call the Winterverse. And the Winterverse was this celebration of the light during the darkest time of the year. And the concept of that came about from, if you look at cultures around the world, whenever it gets to that point in time where it's dark, they tend to celebrate the light. And so we wanted to do something winter themed that wasn't your typical holiday themed. And so we explored that light, and we talked about you, the individual, being the light that shines within the darkness. And that ran for over 3 months and was very well received. So we are exploring more and more areas within this universe that's been created through AI, and we access it through Inter here in New York.
This is so interesting. So this might be a little broad here, but as far as what is the takeaway that a guest walks out with, thinking, feeling, what are they doing after they visit? And I was thinking about this even just kind of during the typical experience that you described, but even the, you know, the Hollowfest and then the Winterfest of being the light that shines within, that's so much more than just going to a tourist attraction and saying, hey, we had fun for 45 minutes with our family. Like there's like that extends far beyond the visit.
Well, so the approach that I've had to experiences for many years is to create layers in your storytelling. So somebody could come in and experience Inter on a very general level, and they come out of there with their own story, their own message. But we factor in these layers, and you can go as deep as you want into it and take more out of it. So it goes back to the core concepts, interconnected. We are interconnected through these elements around us. You, as one of X amount of people in a group experiencing Inter, can engage with other people, you might not even know them, and can uncover more. So look around you, take the world in. We are interconnected. We are all aligned in some way. That's the main focus of what we're trying to accomplish here at Inter.
That's so cool. Excuse me, Zach. I'm wondering if we can switch gears a little bit, but not too far off the path, because you've mentioned storytelling a number of times. And I'm curious, not from a creative guest experience standpoint, but even from a managing director standpoint, how do you use storytelling kind of in your everyday work?
So I think storytelling is something that everybody does at different levels. I mentioned earlier when we were talking about immersive experiences, a restaurant, for example, a chef is telling a story via the plate in front of you. When you stand in front of your team, the words you use and the way that you guide them, that's all part of a story. It has to come from an authentic space and be anchored in that. I got my start in this career as a tour guide. So that's how I learned that I was a storyteller. And I've realized over time that I've always been a storyteller, I just didn't know it. And the way that we deliver these different stories, we uncover them, you yourself become a part of the story too. I've been fortunate enough that most of my career as a tour guide, I was doing high-end VIP experiences. And half the time, people were more fascinated with who's this person that knows all these stories? Where did you come from? What's your backstory? And it's no different with our team here, you know, at Inter. They're guiding the story as they're part of the experience, but then people want to know more about that individual, and you see it reflected on positive reviews where people are talking about how great our guardians are because they had that moment, and it's that connection that comes with it.
Yeah. I would love to talk more about the Guardians and the Guardian experience, and even like you mentioned in online reviews. I think I've mentioned this once or twice on in other previous interviews or in conversations, Matt, that you and I have had, that a 5-star review is much more likely to mention an individual's name than even a 4-star review. So the importance of that personalized experience, and in this case of the storytelling of the individuals who are delivering the experience, bring the entire venue, they lift that up to be that 5-star experience. So I would love to know, as far as kind of what the culture is like, what the Guardian experience is like, and as far as, you know, how you attract the talent and train and build the team of Guardians.
Sure. So our team comes from all different backgrounds. We have artists. Obviously, being an immersive art experience lends itself to drawing in artists. But we have people from all different backgrounds, and it's really about finding a space where they're comfortable and giving them the tools to be able to engage and interact within the experience. I believe I call it creating a sandbox, and then you set the rules and everybody can come and play within the sandbox. So as long as they know what the rules are and they know what the objective is, then they're good to go, and you give them a little bit of leeway on how they tell that story, how they explore the story.
So can we go a little deeper, no pun intended, into the sandbox? And how do you create that environment? Because I know a lot of people would be like, well, if we're giving them that much freedom, they could say something we don't want them to say or do something we don't want them to do. So, you've got to have some parameters around that, but they've also got to have the freedom.
Before I got to Inter, I could explain it a little bit better. Creating guided tours, I never created a script. I worked with my team. We created bullet points. We would put the full story in there. You got to tell the proper story, but we would have these script, for lack of a better word, that could be like a 2-hour tour, knowing that you're going to really only do like a 90-minute tour. And of that 90 minutes, probably only 45 minutes is on that page there. So each stop that you make, there might be 5 to 8 bullet points. You need to talk about 3 of them, but you have the other 4 or 5 in your back pocket that you can go to if somebody asks a question or tries to call you out on something. So it's the same thing anywhere that you go, is just like creating the parameters and expectations and giving them those tools to know that, hey, here's what we want you to talk about. It's not scripted word for word, but this is how you deliver it. And then you kind of add your personality to it, which goes back to that word authentic. If it doesn't feel authentic, you can't fake authenticity. If it doesn't feel authentic, then it's really not, and people disengage from that.
I think that's really fascinating from the tour operator perspective, and I think that there's a lot of parallels. It's all under the same umbrella of tourism, but when you break out the attractions industry, they oftentimes are seen very much separated. So curious if maybe you could share a little bit more of what traditional attractions or immersive experiences can really learn from how tour operators are delivering that experience, kind of even in addition to the storytelling that you're talking about.
Sure. I think the key takeaways from a traditional tour operator is communication. They tend to deliver great, maybe over communicate, which I'm a fan of. What you're going to be doing, where you're going to be going, how you're going to be doing it, what's the itinerary, and then also just like engagement, being there, being focused on the individual in front of you, making them feel like they're the most important person you're going to engage with that day, week, year, and having the ability to do that from person to person and making them all feel like they have your full attention, and that's what your goal is. That's something that attractions need to do as well, is when somebody's entering your space, making them feel welcome. I always talk to my team about, this is your home, and so you're welcoming people into your home. I talked earlier about with like the Guardians, that opportunity when you come face to face with somebody, you have an opportunity to leave a lasting impression that that moment could be the best experience of their vacation, of their time in New York City. And that's something that has always been interesting to me wherever I've worked. And I've worked at some major attractions and then some not so major ones, and each one's important. But you'd hear people say, oh, this was the best thing we did. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, this is New York City. There's the Empire State Building, there's Central Park, and you picked here as your best thing. It's like, yeah, but that's reality, because everything's subjective and you don't know what they're looking for or what they connect to. And tour operators have that ability to engage with people and create that opportunity for them to have that best moment of their time.
You mentioned some of the other attractions and tourist destinations that are available in New York City, and it's really unlimited. I mean, the things that you could do in the city,
Never ending.
Never ending, absolutely. Besides the location, of just being in New York City, what is it that sets that region apart from LA or Orlando or anything like that? Like, what makes it so special?
Talked earlier about how immersives are allowing people to be like the main character in a movie. I think a lot of people come across New York through movies, and that puts it on this pedestal, that it's like, oh, I need to go and see this for myself. And it's very humbling when you meet people, and it's like they've been saving up money to come to New York. It's the one time they're going to come to New York. I'm born and raised in New York. I've grown up with it. I don't take it for granted, but to be able to share my city for the limited time that you're here. And as you said, like, there's so many things to do. So you could come in here, and I see it all the time with people saying, oh, we're coming to New York for 7 days. We want to do this, this, and this. And it's like, you're overthinking it. Just come in here and just explore and have a great time. So I think that it's movies and like TV and just the aura of it is greater than it is, but it lives up to it.
Hmm.
You know, what's interesting is that, the way you described that, you talked about kind of like, here's a scenario of one guest or one family saving up for a very long time to come to New York. And it's like, this is their one shot to do it. And while they're here, they have, like Matt said, like infinite options of things that they can do with a finite amount of time, a finite amount of days, finite amount of resources. Therefore, when that guest walks into your venue at Inter, like they've made such a conscious, intentional decision to say, we're going to do this at this time over all of these other alternatives.
Yeah.
That takes on like a big responsibility, like for that team member, for the Guardian, right? To say like, this better be that 5-star experience.
Correct. Yeah, you have to deliver on their expectations, and that's very difficult to do anywhere because, again, people kind of dream and conceive these ideas of what anything is going to be, and you have to come in and deliver it to the level that they're thinking of it, and you don't even know what that is. So it's important to have an experience that lives up to that level.
Well, and even speaking of that, I would imagine that there's some people that just don't get it.
That's anywhere, though.
Yeah, true. Absolutely.
Anywhere you go, just like, again, going back to the cinema and the movies, you go watch a movie, you might come out of there. I didn't like it. I didn't get it. It's like, okay, that wasn't for you, but you got to experience it. And there's something to be said about taking that time and getting to experience something that's different, or a story being told in a different way.
Yeah.
How do you address those circumstances, or what you just said? Does that resonate with the guest who may have said, I expected X and I perceive that I've experienced Y? Like you said earlier, it's, the reality is all subjective.
We take all feedback, good and bad, and we try to use that to learn and to make the experience even better than it is. So we're always evaluating and trying to improve our experience. And with immersives in particular, that's important because the technology is moving faster than people realize. And so we need to work to pivot and to expand and to make the technology work in our best interest to get the most out of it. So when a guest gives you feedback, you really have to take it to heart and say, okay, it's valid because it's somebody's opinion. They experienced that. Is it something that we could have done better? How do we do that? And then what's the outcome for it?
So I know we've been talking a lot about New York and obviously Inter, but I'm curious from a tourism and an attraction professional, do you have a favorite attraction that's not in New York?
Favorite attraction? I'm a big explorer. I like to go and be on the ground. Philadelphia for me is my favorite city outside of New York City, to just go and walk around and be there. I was just in Washington, D.C. with my kids. Their first time in D.C. was last week. Another great city to just walk around and immerse yourself in the culture and history around you. So I look for that more than necessarily a museum. Having two small kids, I like to take them to museums because I want them to embrace that culture and to learn about how to engage in a museum. And it's interesting to learn through their eyes what works and doesn't work because they're the future of this industry, right? They're the ones that are going to be coming here. We're in a digital heavy world, and then you bring them to a place like Inter, and I watch how they engage with Inter and how they love it because it's technology that's not found on the phone or on the TV that they know how to use. And that's an important thing for the industry to realize is how do we utilize and how do we present opportunities for people to engage and embrace this technology in a way that they can't on their own. So Philadelphia, DC, and just any experience to just be within something and enjoy it.
I'm curious, when you're with your family in Philadelphia or DC and you're in the museums or experiencing culture, when you're there as a guest and you're experiencing other attractions as a guest, what are you thinking about? What are you looking for? Where does your mind go? Can you switch it off? Can you just enjoy yourself? Or are you saying, oh, that's a good idea, or I would never do that, or XYZ?
I'm always taking pictures and kind of putting things in the back of my head. I said before, just like watching my kids last week in DC, we went to a couple of the Smithsonian museums, and it was really fascinating how they engage with the museum and what their takeaways are, and things that they just gloss over, and they're young. But like the one thing that my daughter, who's 6, played with the most was this interactive at the Air and Space Museum that was showing you how to book a flight. And it took you through the steps, and it was like, oh, and at the end, it's like, oh, your ticket cost $700 because you added this, this, and this. And I'm sitting there like, that's a simulator, but she liked it because it was similar to what she knows from like playing games on a phone, and she was learning through it. She couldn't sit there and watch a video. So we have to learn, how do we take these tools that we have, how do we evolve them to tell these stories in a way to different generations. A couple of years ago, I was invited to a museum outside of New York, and they wanted to talk to me about developing tours. And one of the questions they had was, how do you deliver tours to millennials who just move so fast? And I sat there, I took it in, and I said, well, a tour moves fast, and it's no different than like binge watching, where if you're doing a guided tour, you want that story to evolve or to change every 5 to 6 minutes as you're moving. So it works for them because they're used to that culture of every 22 minutes, the next episode comes on. And so it's all these tools that we have in our toolboxes available to us on how we deliver these stories. So it doesn't matter if you're watching your kids or you're working with teenagers and young adults. How do you engage with them, and what are the tools used to deliver a message, a story?
So Zach, you've kind of started to answer this question already. You talk about how things have evolved, and even tours have evolved, and what we can learn and that type of thing. Where do you see kind of the immersive space going in the next 10 to 15 years?
It comes down to that word that I keep touching upon, which is story. And if you have a good concept, a good story, I mean, you mentioned earlier the escape rooms. You could take a concept like that and expand upon it even more, and create an experience that people can have that unique immersive experience while unlocking and doing things to just undo a puzzle. So it comes down to all the stories around us, past, present, future, not even made yet. What can we take, and then how can we deliver it in a space and make it something worthy of the guest dollar, so that they feel like they got more than what they even put into it.
The way you describe that is, it extends beyond, the future of immersive type attractions. And I use escape rooms as an example, but as you were saying all that, I'm thinking like, this is the future of museums. This could be the future of so many other tourism focused venues and businesses. So is that where you see, the application extending beyond something that is labeled, this is an immersive attraction, to every attraction being an immersive attraction?
Yeah, because you're creating a space and you're inviting people into that space. And then it goes back to earlier, I talked about just like your general museum, an art museum, you are immersed in that experience. So now the challenge is for those spaces to take the technology and pair it with what they do, and they are doing it. The American Museum of Natural History here in New York has one of the best projection mapping experiences I've ever seen. It's just crisp and clear and a great time. So it's just a matter of like, how do you deliver that message? What tools do you have, again? And how do you do something what's the lifespan of it? Because the technology moves so fast. I remember more than 10 years ago, going back to the Intrepid Museum, one of my tour guides was giving a tour and had a challenge on how he could share a certain story. And we actually had this letter in the collection, which was held in the lower levels. And he had a photo of it on his iPhone. And this was when iPhones were fairly new, but he brought it out for the group and he showed it to them on there after he told them the story. And I was sitting there and I was like, oh, something clicked. We went and we bought 10 iPads, and then instead of having the loose leaf binder where you're flipping photos, we had a nice iPad screen where we could put all our photos on. And then that led to delivering, we created over 50 15-minute stories that we told throughout the museum over the course of years, which led to the New York Times coming in and reviewing them and other affiliates. And it led to bigger and bigger things. When Hurricane Sandy happened here in New York, the museum was closed for several weeks. We took a lot of those stories and we started telling them on the YouTube channel and on social media. This is 2012. Content wasn't really a term you used back then, but we created content for it. And when I moved from there to, I opened up the World Trade Center here in New York, the observation deck there, and they have something there called City Pulse, which I was fortunate enough to be a part of the team that created that. And that's a system that has been around now. It's going on 10 years next year. I've never seen anything advanced beyond it. It's a ring of 10 screens, and the tour ambassador in the center controls the screens hands-free. It looks like magic, but they're really wearing a device that they can control. It reads their gesture movements. There's over 100 unique stories in there, and then the tour guide embellishes upon that, and they could take that and tell 100 more stories. So again, it's the tools and how do you create something that has a long shelf life. You don't want to make that investment, and 6 months from now, the technology's moved beyond it, and you're sitting there and you're like, I can't do anything.
You know, it's funny, as Josh was saying, he was listening to you talk, that sparked an idea in him, and what you were just saying sparked an idea in me too. Whereas you talk about the educational component of this, and you know, I know there's a lot of challenges with schools, but I mean, if those kind of things were done in school, I would have enjoyed history a lot more. Yeah. You know, when I was younger. And that's one thing I do enjoy now, is going and learning about the history that I didn't learn when I was back in school because I just wasn't interested. Do you see that as sort of an addition to the immersive experiences, the educational content?
Oh, absolutely. Here at Inter, we welcome students on field trips. We've made it really reasonable rates for them because we want them to come and experience it. Art teachers can bring students here and show them like the future of art and a different way of exploring art. And really, when you like break it down, if you have the tools in place, it's not as expensive as other disciplines of art. Yeah, no, school trips are so important because it allows the educators to remove the students from their classroom, which is an immersive experience unto itself, and take you somewhere where you can build upon what foundation they've laid for you and let you experience something different, unique, and then go back to the classroom and hopefully continue to build upon it.
And it sounds like this could also be the future of school. You know, when Matt's saying like I would have paid attention to history a lot more if the teacher had that device and had all the screens around them, and it's like, now this is how you're learning. Obviously, that's much higher budget than, you know, a whiteboard and some markers and a projector, but like the proportional educational value of it is potentially there.
Absolutely. And I don't remember when I first heard the term, but it used to really just like really upset me, but I've embraced it over time. But that term edutainment, where, and that's predominantly what I've done for most of my career, is to entertain and educate. And if you can educate, and the thing I've learned over time is we spend so much time trying to focus on how do we get the adults and the kids to like it. And if you like focus on like 5th or 6th grade, everybody's going to like it. Like just like aim for that area. Adults will get it. Kids will get it. They'll have a great time. And when you're doing that, though, if you can get people to learn in a way that they don't realize they're learning, then they get so much more out of it. And that's what experiences can do. And it doesn't matter if you're an amusement park or a water park. There's something to learn there. There's some value you're going to gain from it. I mean, people talk about you learn something new every day. You can learn something at all of these places. I know I do when I go.
For sure, for sure. Well, Zach, this has been an amazing conversation, and we're running a little short on time, but I wanted to ask one more question, and that was kind of about your career, but also what you see in terms of the future for the people side of the business. So if you had some advice for people that were kind of following in your footsteps or kind of, going into leading the tourism and attraction business, what would that advice be?
So every day, we as individuals are working towards our next opportunity. You put the effort in, you put the work in now. You don't know necessarily what that opportunity is going to be or when it shows itself. But if you put that effort and that work in today, you're going to be one step closer to being able to take advantage of your opportunity when it presents itself.
Very well said. Excellent. Really appreciate that advice. That guidance. It's a great note to end on as well. So, Zach, if people wanted to learn more about Inter, or if they wanted to get a hold of you directly, where would you send them?
So for Inter, you can purchase tickets or learn about Inter at interiam.co. We're also on LinkedIn and TikTok and Instagram, and you can find me on LinkedIn as well. Just look my name, Zach Blutner.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Zach, for spending some time with us today. So fascinating. And for everybody out there who's watching and listening, just remember, we are all attraction pros. Thanks for listening to the Attraction Pros podcast.
Make sure to subscribe so you can tune in when new episodes release. And even better, please leave us a review on iTunes.
For more information, visit attractionpros.com.